Hi guys, welcome to the new part of the Creating a Water Sphere with LiquidGen free tutorial series. So we worked on the first part to learn how to use LiquidGen to create the water sphere. Then we talked about exporting everything out to 3D software in part 2, and we saw how to use 3ds Max to import and then how to render stuff with V-Ray. In part 3 we talked about Houdini, so how to import the stuff in Houdini, and now it is time to talk about the water sphere inside Blender. So it is important to say that Blender is not my main software, so I'm not skilled on Blender. So usually I try to learn the feature or the stuff I need when maybe some clients need something inside Blender, or maybe just for this case when I have to do something about a tutorial or maybe a masterclass. So for sure, I'm sure that there are many ways to do the same stuff I'm trying to do. Maybe there are better ways, so please take care about it, and remember that it is not my main software, so maybe I can do some mistakes, and maybe I can do something not in the best way possible. By the way, you see that here we have the project that is done. So we'll try to do everything from scratch. And we are not taking care about project scaling and stuff like that, or the FPS velocity and stuff like that, because it is not a tutorial about Blender, how to export stuff from Blender to LiquidGen, how to be back in Blender, and how to merge again the stuff inside the same scene. So actually it's just to understand how the stuff can be imported in Blender and how you can play with the materials and stuff like that. So we can go in an empty Blender. So you know that the basic scene essentially is a camera, a light, and a cube. So we don't need a cube. We don't need the light for the moment. We have to add the sphere. We are going to use later, so we can create from add mesh UV sphere, this one. It can be enough for the moment because it is used just to stay inside our simulation. And just to see something, maybe we can use not the smooth, but we can directly use the subdivision surface to have maybe more, just more smooth face. I don't need the smooth groups because it is just visible inside the refraction. So for the moment, don't take care about it. Double click and let's call it inner sphere. We don't need the material because, again, it is essentially a gray or white stuff inside our simulation. So we have to start to import the stuff. So first of all, let's go inside File, Import, Alembic. We go inside the folder and we are going to import essentially the mesh, form, and spray. So let's start from the mesh. Remember that this one is really, really huge. So you see that here we have the scaling for the moment. It's okay to stay with 1.0 because we are using not scale because it is essentially a LiquidGen project. Let's say that the end frame is 1000 because we exported 1000 frames. With the Alt key, let's try to move, and you see that here we have the simulation. So essentially let's pick the inner sphere, and if we go and let's say that we go to scale 2 times, so 200%, and this one can stay at 15, maybe just a little bit up, but we have to see. So let's go, for example, at frame 600, Cache is really huge, so you see it takes just a little bit of time to do it. Maybe we can rise up this one to 15.5 meters. Okay, so now we have it. I like to move the camera because the camera will be essentially in front of our mesh, and we go to set 0, 20, 15.15, and then we go for 90 degree over the x-axis, 0 over the y-axis, and 90 over the z-axis. So you see that essentially the camera is in front of our mesh. If we click over here, now you see that we are in front of our mesh. I'm working in the layout, so I like to see how this one looks in rendering. So we go in this mode, and about the renderer, we go here to select the render engine, and we go to use cycles. It takes just a little bit, and then you see that we have a basic visualization. I'm not taking care about the parameters for the moment, but we have to go inside the word because I like to add essentially a background with an HDR map. So we go here in the color because you see that actually it is essentially using the color for the environment. We click over the icon and we go to select environment texture. Then we go to create a new one, so open a new one. So I have this one is a 2-key texture from a website you know, and we are using always this one on Polyhaven, and we are in the HDR skies, so you can download it freely. For the moment, we are not taking care about the strength. It's not important. By the way, for example, we can set to 0.5 for the moment. If we go in the render setting for the scene, we can go inside film, and if we set here transparent, the world is transparent, so we see just our fluid mesh. Okay, so let's go to create a material for this one, and to create the material we can go in the material here. You can create a new one, and let's call it water sphere. Actually, it is using a principle BSDF. We are going to create something maybe a little bit more simple. So we go in the shading, and you see that here we can go directly in the camera view. Okay, you see that we are using this one as a material, but the idea is to create something more simple, mixing some different shaders. So we go to create a new one, so right mouse button, and about the shader we go for the glass BSDF. Let's connect this one as a surface, so you see that actually it is using this one, so we have essentially a glass material, and then we can decide how to control the other stuff. So let's go to have another shader, and we go for a transparent BSDF, and now we go to mix both to control the surface. So add, and we go for a mixed shader. The first one is this one, and the second one is the transparent, and then we go to connect this one. So now this one essentially can control how much transparency do we have. For the moment, let's stay in this way. And about the glass here, you see that we have to control about the roughness. And by the way, let's go back to the layout to see something more. You see how it's looking right now, because we are reflecting the surface and we have the refraction here. So let's go back in the in our shader here. Let's go to 1.33, more similar to a water surface. Then I like to control the volume, so we go to add a new shader, a volume absorption, and this one is connected here in the volume. We can, for example, decide that the volume is green, and here you see that you have the density. We are going to taking care about density and the color later. I prefer to create the shader actually, just to have maybe some kind of lighting inside to compensate the volume absorption. We can use an add shader, and we go to create an emission shader. Okay. Let's go to add this one here, and this one here, and then here. Okay, you see that we have this kind of luminescence inside. And just to give you an idea, if we go back in the layout, that's what we have actually. Obviously, everything is really heavy, and the visibility now is not so nice. So let's add the last thing I like to use, and I'm going to add a new add shader here. So we're going to use this mixture, but we are going to add a glossy to add another layer of reflectivity over. So let's go here, shader, glossy, and connect here. So it is done. Essentially now we can go to play with the material directly in the layout. So that's what we have, and you see that here we have the material. We have the surface that is based on an add shader with a mix shader, and then a layer of glossy BSDF. Here we have the mix with the glass and the transparent, and this one is the glossy. Okay, so here we can control everything directly from this point of view. So let's start playing with the color about the glass, and let's go for hue 06, 07, and the value 09. So something like that. I like to have a little bit of roughness. So let's say that the roughness is 04, the IRR is right. And then we have to play with the other stuff we are working on. So for the moment, let's go in the volume. And let's say that we have no density here, and we have no strength here. So we see essentially just this layer, okay? Then for the moment, the transparency stay like that to white. And about the glossy, let's say that we have no roughness, because I like to have more straight reflection over it, and then you can decide how much is visible. So maybe we can do something like that. Okay, let's say that the color is done. Now we can take care about the volume and the transparency and the emission. So let's say that here we have 04, 08, and then maybe let's go a little bit lower, or maybe just a little bit more. Let's say more saturation, and let's go to 08 for the value. And then you see that here we have the density, and it is becoming more or less visible. Let's try with 6. You see that we have this greenish color inside. By the way, let's go in the level here for the word. Let's go to 1.5. So we have more reflectivity and more lighting coming from the word. Back to the water here, then we have the possibility to control the emission. And let's go to add some kind of bluish. Let's try 06, 08. Maybe more bluish. Let's see if it is 02. Okay, you see that we are giving this bluish color. Let's try it 0.1. So just a little bit, okay? So it is not so much. And let's try another frame. It takes a little bit to load, just to see how many details we have. And go to save this one. Let's say LiquidGen import. Okay. So now we need something else. We need the particles. So here we have some kind of problem. And the problem is that essentially the alembic file, and we can try to import. Let's go in the foam. It is really huge. Okay, it is back to frame 0. Let's go back to frame 650. Now it is loading both, but you see that the particles of the white water is not renderable. That's why essentially the particles are just points. So we have nothing else. So let's say that we pick the foam and we go in the geometry nodes. We need the geometry nodes to essentially to scatter some elements to the points we have. So let's go in the camera view, and you see that here we have essentially the sphere, and we go to create a new one. Okay, you see the input and the output, and then we go to add something about the mesh, and we use operation mesh to points, and then we go to connect this one. So you see that now we have something. Let's go to see what's going on. It is rendering, but the sphere are really huge. So it is here, the geometry nodes, and we can take care about it. So let's go back in the geometry nodes, and you see that the radius is 0.05, and this one is essentially the radius of the sphere that is used to create our render. So we can go for 0.01. It takes a little bit, but you see that now they are smaller, but maybe we can go smaller, but before we can see what's going on in the rendering. Okay. I think that there are still too big. So let's go for 0.005. We can leave this color, it's not important to take care about the materials. Maybe in a future tutorial we can talk about the material here. By the way, this time it's not so important. So if we go back to the layout, you see that now we have the foam. And we can do the same for the splash. So let's go to import the other alembic. And we go into spray. And we go to do the same. Let's say 650. So let's close some stuff. Let's go to the spray geometry node. Let's say that the foam is not visible, so we have just the spray here. Okay, let's create a new, and then we can use the same. So I'm taking care about two different geometry nodes configuration, because maybe we can need to take care about scaling in a different way. You see that, for example, now I'm using half scaling of the foam over the spray. Okay, let's go back in the layout and let's set back the foam. So now we have both in render. Let's go for a moment here, and let's say that we go a little bit lower with the exposure. Maybe less. This one is the exposure of everything, so I'm not working directly on the word, but I'm working on the exposure of the rendering. Other stuff that can be done for the moment, I think that's okay. I like to see what's going on if we have some light inside the scene, just to have a nicer look. So let's go to add a light, and we go for an area light. I like to see where we have the light. Okay, so we can move this one. And let's say that we are going to do something like that. Oh, sorry. Let's say that this one can be maybe something like that, and more rotation, and back in the layout. And then I go to set the strength for the word to 0, so we see just the slide. Let's name this one as LGT side as X, so we know that this one is the light coming from this point of view. In the light here, we say that the size is maybe, let's try with 8 meters, maybe 10 meters. And let's go for a really high energy. That you see that we are going to have the light just coming from the back. Maybe we'll have a light over the top. We have to the side. I like to see if we can do something more. Let's go to see the rotation. I like to have something coming more from the back. Okay. And about the energy, let's try to have more energy. Let's try with 2500 watt. So really high energy light coming from the back. And then we can duplicate this one. So let's copy. And we go to rename this one to DX. So we know that this one will stay on the other side. We get to change the color. Let's go for a reddish color just to have something different. Then we go to move this one there. And then we go to rotate to have a different configuration. So we go for something more straight. And then we go for something like that. And maybe we can go a little bit there. And about the lighting, let's find an interesting coloring. Let's try to have something like that. and maybe we go just a little bit back. Okay, let's go back in the or maybe we can before Control C, Control V, and this one will be called top. Let's say that this one is 0, and we go to move this one here and here. Let's say that we have no rotation over the z-axis, and then over the x-axis we go over here, and about the color I try to do something like that. Let's go for a bigger area, but we go to a lower energy. Let's go for 500 for the moment, and let's go back to the word. So this one is essentially 1. Let's try to have more. Let's try with 0, 75. And then about this light, let's go to the right. Okay, and to the DX, let's go for something else about the color. And more energy, and then over the top, let's go for a white color. But we go to to rotate the light, so this coming from here, and let's go back here and let's set to 0 so we see what's going on with this light. So about this one, let's go back here and let's go to rise up. Really powerful. Sorry. Back in the material for the liquid. In the glossy, we go to add a little bit of glossy reflection. And let's see if we go higher with the reflectivity. Okay. Okay, a little bit higher glossy, so it is essentially just reflection. Then let's go back to the refraction. So in the glass we have 0.4. Okay, let's go back to 0.4. Something else we can do is to go back in the environment, and we can add a little bit but then you see it's too glossy, so let's go back to the material and let's remove the glossy reflection. Okay. Okay, back here. I like to double check if something can be tweaked. Maybe less addition for this reflectivity because it became too much. Okay. This one is back, this one is back, and this one is back. Now let's go back to have this one to 0, so we see how this is looking. Okay, and save. So I like to rotate the HDR just to see how it is going. So let's go to F back the light, and then we go in the shading. And then we go from the object to word, so we have essentially our background. I like to go back here in edit because we have to add something. So let's go in the preferences, add on, and I was searching for it. So you have to set to active the node wrangler, and then we can select this one and use Ctrl T, and then you see that, oh sorry, we have the vector nodes that are controlling the mapping. Okay, so back in the layout, we have the possibility now to rotate the map. So let's go back in the shading. We get to render using cycles. So it takes just a little bit, but we can see what's going on with the rotation. So let's see, for example, at 45, 90, 180. Ah, sorry, I'm rotating on the wrong axis, sorry. Sorry, I'm using the scaling. Oh, sorry for my mistake. Let's get to rotate. Let's see. This time you see that we have the lighting coming from one side because the sun is on the back. So let's get to have something that is coming from one side. Let's go back to have the transparency, so it is not visible, and back on the word we got to have something brighter, and back in the material we can tweak maybe just a little bit in the volume, the emission strength. So let's go to 0.05. So it is lower than before. And then let's go back to have this light that is adding energy on the side. This one that is adding this greenish color. And this one that is adding some white color coming from this area. Over the SX, let's see if we go to something that is not so cold. And let's do something over this one too. Going to the bluish. Okay. Back on this one, I like to go. I'm just checking some kind of lighting that I'm going to prefer. Okay. Something like that is nice. Okay, back in the layout. And essentially you see that we have a nice looking configuration. If you go here, you can decide which is the quality for the viewport, and then the final quality here. Actually it is set until maximum 4096 samples, and it will stop when the noise threshold will be 0.01. We have also the noiser set to active. Let's see with a lower exposure. Okay. So we are not going to do so much stuff here, but maybe we can play with the curves. Just to have a nicer looking. Okay, you see just a little bit of tweaks over the rendering curves. So let's go to save, and then if you like to render, essentially you can decide the resolution. Let's say maybe 2040, 54, 1044, and you can say that the last one is 1000, and you can render everything. It will go to render as PNG actually, or you can go here and say okay, render image, and it will start to render. It's preparing, and then you see this moving step by step. So you see essentially it's 40% of the rendering, so it is not final. By the way, you know, we asked for a really high quality. You see that the result is really nice. We have a nice lighting, and we have a nice looking shading here. Maybe we can go a little bit lower with the scaling for the foam particles, and you know, we are not using any kind of shader for the foam and spray, so maybe you can go to use something with scattering or stuff like that. By the way, for the moment I think that's enough, because it is really not bad. So guys, that's all. Essentially we saw in general with a really nice introduction how to pick the stuff from LiquidGen and then move inside Blender. So thanks for watching guys, and I hope to see you back on to watch more tutorials coming from JangaFX. Bye.